Andrew Ravens here for Raven Sports Take Podcast. And boy, do we have a stacked show. We're going to break this thing down into a couple of segments. Not only are we going to get into some MMA talk, we're going to get into some NASCAR talk, and then we'll do a little bit of the WWE draft later in the show. First off is MMA, and wow. So, if you've been living under a rock, you'll know that you won't know this, but if you've been out open and really been paying attention to the world of MMA for the last, good 11, 12 days, the UFC has been taking some hits as of late. And for those who are not aware of this, former UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar not only tested positive for out-of-competition drug test for June 28th, but then also he failed an in-competition test on July 9th, which was his fight date with Mark Hunt in the co-main event of UFC 200. Now, a lot of people are speculating, well, is it estrogen blockers just like John Jones tested positive for? We don't really know, and USANA will not announce that until either Lesnar does publicly by himself or when they give him his sentencing, which for the out of competition, he would have received 6 months. But since he failed for 2 drug tests, both in and out of competition, he's looking at a 2-year ban, which is not very good for a guy who is 38 years of age, who just came off a huge performance by, earning a decision victory over the hard-hitting Samoan Mark Hunt. And while yes, that does affect the outlook of his performance, and it does affect the UFC, a lot of people are not looking at the fact of how does this affect his WWE career. He is under contract with World Wrestling Entertainment. He does face Randy Orton at SummerSlam next month. The New York State Athletic Commission, which SummerSlam is being held in Brooklyn, New York, they came out with a statement and really didn't give us much earlier this week. Lesnar was not on WWE programming this week. WWE has acknowledged his out-of-competition test with a very brief statement, and basically they said nothing. Lesnar fought for the UFC. That's not of our concern. He'll be back at SummerSlam against Randy Orton. That was the statement. Lesnar issued a statement last Friday when the out-of-competition test came back negative, or positive, and basically said that, we'll get to the bottom of this, and that was his statement. So, not a lot of great PR here, I guess, by the UFC, WWE, and Brock Lesnar, but you have to wonder, okay, does WWE acknowledge this on WWE television? Does the UFC book Brock Lesnar again? Does Lesnar fight in 2 years when he does indeed receive his 2-year suspension? There's a lot of things going around right now, and there's not a lot of answers. So that's a developing story on its own. Switching gears now, we go to Chad Mendes. Chad Mendes last fought at the Tough 22 finale against Frankie Edgar, which he lost. He's on a 2-fight losing streak, and he tested positive and just got a 2-year ban by USANA. USANA announced that today, which is Wednesday, July 20th. He'll probably be back, but it looked like in his last 2 fights, which he lost, that he was on the decline. And so you have to wonder, okay, was Mendes on his decline? Was he just going through a rough patch? But then you also have to throw in the fact of he's going to be older. He's going to be on a 2-year rust. How does he come back from this? So Chad Mendes acknowledged this on Twitter back on June 18th and basically stated that he didn't do his homework on whatever he tested positive for, which was growth hormones, GHRP6. So, it was an out-of-competition drug test that he failed on May 17th of this year. And he'll be back May 17th of 2018. So Chad Mendes is going to be out of the sport for a minute. It'll be interesting to see if he rebounds, but USANA is going after these guys, and they have to be on their toes. You cannot be taking any PEDs or anything that is illegal on the substance list, or you're going to get caught. This is a different time. This is a different age, not only in the UFC, but in MMA in general. And USANA is just going after, folks. Switching gears now, we're going to go into some NASCAR talk, and you can make an argument that this is the biggest story of the year. It's definitely the biggest story of the last 2 weeks, and that is Dale Earnhardt Jr. He suffered a concussion between the time of Kentucky and Daytona, and he missed last week's race at New Hampshire. Alex Bowman replaced him in the number 88 nationwide car, and Dale Jr. All right, so they came out with a press release by Hendrick Motorsports on Wednesday stating that Dale Jr. would not be able to race not only at this Sunday's Indianapolis race, Brickyard 400, but he's also going to miss next weekend's race, which is at Watkins Glen. Now, last week, they announced, or pretty much teased, that if Jr. was not able to drive his vehicle at the upcoming races, that former four-time NASCAR champion, 93 winner, Jeff Gordon would replace him. Now, of course, Jeff Gordon retired, quote-unquote retired, more took a break from racing last year and was very, very consistent in his finishes. He picked up a win at Martinsville in 2015 of that fall. He went into Homestead, which is the series finale, or season finale, I should say, of the NASCAR season. Was in contention for the win. Not only the race, but the championship. Ultimately, it came down to Gordon, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr. Kyle Busch not only won the race, but he won the championship as well. Gordon did a very good job in that race. He was very clean. He took some aggressive moves, but at the end of the day, he ran a perfect race. And there was a lot of people, including myself, that thought Jeff Gordon should not be coming back to NASCAR. Not only just because of the performance that he did in 2015, Jeff Gordon is one of these guys that have always been consistent. He's always been a challenger, always been a contender, and not only every race, but every season, and for the better part of a championship every year. One of the all-time greatest NASCAR drivers in history. The way he went out, where he was in contention of winning almost every race of last year, picking up a win, but more importantly, he was relevant in NASCAR. A lot of guys that retire, they go on several years of drought of no winning races and not competitive at all, and then they just slowly burn out and then retire. Jeff Gordon was the first guy, arguably, to not do that. He was always relevant, he was always in contention, and now he's coming out of quote-unquote retirement, or however you would want to state that, to drive Dale Jr.'s number 88 car. There's a list of issues I have with this. Not only he's not running the 24, he's not with his crew chief, he's not going to be with his spotter, he's not going to be with his team, he's going to be with Greg Ives and a number 88 Chevrolet on a 2-race stint, possibly. As of right now, it's a 2-year or a 2-race stint, but it could be longer. Ricky Craven was on ESPN this morning stating that, Bristol's coming up and a couple other tracks are coming up, and with a concussion, you really can't run those races because they'll mess with your psychology and your mind. And he has a very, very good point. There's always been speculation that Dale Jr. has not been mentally right in a race car, not only because of the death of his father, but because of concussions. He missed 2 races in 2020 or 2012, excuse me, because of concussions that he sustained at Talladega in a massive wreck. So he has a history of concussions. Not only has he came out and stated that he would donate his brain for research once he passes, but also he's been working with the University of Pittsburgh about concussions, which is one of the most leading universities in concussion studies. So you already have that thought of, oh my, is he going to step out of the car because of concussions? Not only does this affect his career, but it also affects his personal life. He's engaged. He wants kids. You have to think he's only 41 years of age. He turns 42 later this year. So you have to think of his personal life as well. There's a lot of storylines going in to not only Indianapolis, but Watkins Glen. How will Jeff Gordon perform? Yes, he's the most notable race car driver in Brickyard history. He has the most wins there. He has the most poles there. He has the most lead laps there. There's no doubt that Jeff Gordon is a great race car driver, but coming out of the booth, not only will he be able to perform, that's questionable in itself, but also does this hurt his legacy? Like I said earlier, there's never been a NASCAR driver who has went out on top and stayed out. And Jeff Gordon, as a fan, I say it honestly, it hurts not only his reputation, but it hurts the way that fans will look at his career, because it's only a failure. There's no positive to Jeff Gordon coming out of retirement unless he wins both races. And come on, folks, let's be honest. As a Jeff Gordon fan, I can honestly say he will not win Indianapolis. He will not win at Watkins Glen. It's not going to happen. Most of his success, not only at Watkins Glen, but more importantly, Indianapolis, came in the late 1990s. Sorry. If you look at his stats over the past couple years, not only at Indianapolis, but at Watkins Glen, he's a top 15 to top 20 finishing car, and most importantly, he usually wrecks. It's not a very good positive for Jeff Gordon fans. So we'll see how that enters. I don't like that he's coming out of retirement, but that's his decision, and we have to go with it. Quickly, to wrap this up, we're going to talk a little bit about the WWE Draft. That took place on Tuesday night, and Seth Rollins was the first overall pick for the Raw brand, and Dean Ambrose was the number one pick overall for the SmackDown brand. A couple notable names for Raw. They got Finn Balor, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, The New Day, Sami Zayn, Chris Jericho, Kevin Owens, Cesaro, Sheamus, Nia Jax got drafted up. Let's see. And that's about it. For SmackDown, not a very good draft. As noted, they got Ambrose, they got AJ Styles, John Cena, Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, American Alpha from NXT, Alberto Del Rio, Alexa Bliss from NXT, Eva Marie from NXT, Mojo Rawley, and Carmella from NXT. In terms of the announcers, Booker T and Jerry Lawler will be featured on the pre-show and kickoff shows on the WWE Network. And for the announced teams for Raw and SmackDown, your Raw broadcast team will be Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and Byron Saxton, while SmackDown will be led by Mauro Ranallo, JBL, and David Otunga. Tom Phillips and Corey Graves rounds out your commentary broadcast teams for Superstars and Main Event. So that will be fun. They have Battleground this Sunday. We'll be back with a prediction show later on this week for that. And then, of course, results. A couple quick plugs. Get that out of the way. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew_Ravens. Of course, you can read all of my material at Wrestling News Co. and MMAnewssource.com, as well as eWrestlingNews.com and eFightNews.com. That'll do it. That's done with the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. And as always, I'll speak with you next time.